Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love Me Tinder. We're just going to do a quick check that you can hear me okay and that the music is no longer playing. Okay, I get a yes from Emily, so we are good to go. So welcome to Love Me Tinder. It has a very long title after that I cannot remember at this time. This is our last event of Love Data 25, which is the end of this week. And we are going to get started. So we have a pretty packed session for you today. And then at the end, we will do questions and discussion and anything else that you want to do. At this time, everyone is muted and you cannot unmute yourselves. Once we get to the discussion questions, I'll remove that setting. And then if you want to talk, you will be able to do that. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves, actually. My name is Marcella. I am the coordinator of the Digital Scholarship Hub at McGill University, and I'm also a liaison librarian. And you can find me either on X or Blue Sky. I'm slowly doing that transition at Mars's Wisdom. And I'll let Emily introduce herself and get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Kingsland, and I'm an associate librarian at McGill University. I'm a subject librarian, and my specialties are psychology as well as educational and counseling psychology. You can also find me on both X, and I'm also making the transition over to Blue Sky, and on both apps, my username is Kingslam. Before we get started, I just want to say that I'd like to keep in mind that a lot of the survey data and the research that Marcella and I have found we found that it skews North American, white, and mostly heterosexual. So I do want to acknowledge that at the start of this presentation. Okay, Marcella, you can go to the next slide. All right, so before we talk about dating applications, I wanted to look at all the single people who are using these apps. So, in industrialized countries, the share of single people has been rising steadily over the last few decades. And when the pandemic hit in 2020 and everyone in the world had to socially distance, meeting new people became a lot more difficult. And this really resulted in a boom of online dating services, which the industry, by the way, it was already on the rise. Revenue was on the rise before the pandemic, but it really boomed with the pandemic. Next slide. So, in terms of users, the country with the largest share of single people who are using these very modern matchmaking methods is Sweden. So, here we can see that 25% of people said they used online dating services in Sweden. Brazil was very close to the top with a ranking of 22%. And then on the flip side, we can see that South Korea and Russia, they seem to get along just fine without much help from online dating. And what we really know from the data out there is that no matter where you are in the world, dating apps have become the most common way for single people to meet. Next. So, dating can be expensive, and in some cities, it could put you into debt. So, if you go on a date in Switzerland with the intention of paying for dinner and drinks, you need to save up because a so called cheap date in Switzerland or in Zurich specifically could cost you around $200 US. So, a cheap date is defined as cab rides, dinner or lunch for two people, soft drinks, and normally the dinner or lunch is at like a pub or a diner, soft drinks, two movie tickets, and a couple of beers. So Oslo comes in second with $164 a date. Copenhagen third with around $158. So if you're wondering where you can go to really stretch your dollar on a date, then the data suggests that you should have your date in either Cairo or Bangalore because a romantic evening for two would only set you back around $42. Next slide. So the statistic on the left, it shows you the results of a survey that was conducted in the US in 2019 on whether respondents were in love at the time of the survey. And sadly, 33% of respondents said that they were not in love at all. And yet, the statistic on the right shows survey results, also conducted in the US, on whether respondents believed in true love. And despite perhaps not currently being in love, most respondents said that they believe in true love. Next up. All right. So in 2024, the number of online dating users in the US was estimated to have surpassed 60 million people. And according to a survey of American dating app users, almost half of the women in the country who joined online dating services did so to meet a long-term partner. And this is kind of funny when we compare it to the reason why men were joining. Around 43% of men did the same, but to find a casual date. Next slide. So I actually am a online dating success story. I met my husband on Bumble. And so we're one of those dating app success stories. And I was really interested to learn that as of 2022, 9% of US partnered straight adults said that they met their current partner or spouse on an online dating platform. And also very interesting, I found, was the statistic is actually much higher for partnered lesbian, gay, or bisexual adults in the US, where 24% met their partner online. Okay, next. So, sad reality of online dating is that breakups happen, even to the best of us. In 2022, around 58% of respondents in the US have stated that their breakups tended to be messy and dramatic. In comparison, around almost 25% of respondents claim that their breakups were very casual and civil, and the number in between are folks who just couldn't quite label how their breakup went down. All right. So this is our first chance for all of you to share your thoughts and theories. So we would like you to know you could hop in the chat and write down your answers. What do you think is the most popular dating app? And we define most popular as the most downloaded dating app in the world and also the world leader in dating app revenue. So we're going to give you all a sec to write in the comments and let us know what you think is the most popular online dating app. So I'm seeing so far four Tinders, one, two Hinges. No idea. Farmers Mingle. Because city folk just don't get it. Okay, Cupid, Tinder, eHarmony. Grace, you're unsure. You voted twice now, Grace. Hinge, eHarmony, Bumble, Grinder, Grinder or Grind. It's Grinder without the E. Okay, so are we ready to reveal, Marcella? Okay, ba-ba-da-ba. The leader is Tinder. Yeah, so Tinder, definitely the most popular online dating app. It has over 6.1 million monthly downloads as of June of 2024. It's also the most downloaded dating application in the world. It's number one in Canada as well. It was first released in April of 2012, and it introduced the world to the swiping left for no, swiping yes for right model. And by 2024, Tinder was the leading dating app by revenue as well. They generated a monthly in-app purchase revenue of more than 82 million US dollars. Okay, so let's have a look now at what the average Tinder user, who they are. So we'll go to the next slide. So Tinder has a really higher share of the Gen Z population compared to any other app online. 55% of Tinder users are male, and you'll find that most dating apps tend to skew male. Tinder users are actually likely to live in cities with over 1 million people, like more 1 million inhabitants than other online daters in general. They also, 16% identify as being part of the LGBTQ plus community. Tradition is less important to Tinder than other online dating app users. They find themselves more interested in being successful and in being in a happy relationship. Gaming and esports are huge with Tinder users. They're also more likely to do fitness, aerobics, and cardio than other dating apps. A relatively high share of Tinder users think that the economic situation is an issue that needs to be addressed. And then lastly, Snapchat is the most popular app among Tinder users compared to the average online dating user. So that's a quick snapshot of who uses Tinder. So now I'm curious for all of you again to share in the chat, what do you think are Tinder's fastest growing interests. So these are things that people would put in their bios, like their profiles on Tinder, and list as their interests so that they could find other like-minded people who also share those interests. So feel free to take a wild guess on the chat and think, what are people? Taylor Swift, I would probably guess that. Pets, that's a good guess. Any other? Pickleball. Pickleball is growing, especially in my neighborhood. Gym, food interests, Netflix, concerts. Concerts is close. Fitness, the gym, lasagna. Yeah, okay, CJ, that's right up my alley. Lasagna is getting likes. Finding a relationship. Yeah. Okay, Marcella, do we want to reveal it now? Okay. So the fastest growing interests are gaming. I think someone wrote that in the chat. Spa, podcasts or playlists, and heavy metal music. Now, you might remember from an earlier slide in the presentation that 25% of single people in Sweden are on apps. And I think that it's not a coincidence that heavy metal is an area of interest that's rising because heavy metal music is very popular in Nordic countries like Sweden. I imagine spas are quite popular there too. We hear a lot about Nordic spas. So I feel as though that might influence part of these growing interests on Tinder. Okay, so next up, Marcella, we are going to talk about what are the fastest growing emojis on Tinder. So these are the emojis, the little icons that people put in their bios, like their profile pages on Tinder. I was actually talking about this presentation this morning to an older colleague at work, and he jokingly asked me what an emoji was, and I told him it's like hieroglyphics for the youth. So in the chat, the source is Tinder, yes. So in the chat, oh, and also Marcella and I, one of the things that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the presentation is on our last slide, we have a link to our bibliography that'll list all the sources and the material that we found in this presentation. Um, yeah, so I believe, okay, Victoria has a unicorn emoji. I love it. Um, eyes emoji. I like that one a lot. Oh, hand heart emojis. Also linking cowboy hat emoji, kissy face, and side eye. Love the side eye. Mushroom. People into foraging or other things. Oh, heart on fire. Poop emoji. Peach emoji for sure. I could see that being popular. These are the fastest growing ones, I should say. Skull and crossbones. Monkey hiding their face. I like that one. Any other guesses? Yeah, rainbow flag. That would definitely be popular on an app we're going to talk about soon. Okay, Marcella, should we reveal what they are? Okay, so these surprised me, and I said to Marcella, one of the things that made me feel really old was having to look up what emoji mean, but I've done my best. So the fastest growing emoji is the pink ribbon or red ribbon, depending on the phone that you have emoji. I got a lot of this information both from Tinder's website, but also from Emojipedia, a highly reliable academic source. So the ribbon often indicates something that is pretty or cute or special. It's often considered playful or a little coquette. The black cloud emoji, this came up in people's bios, and Tinder themselves theorize that it's a realistic take on dating and that people aren't afraid to acknowledge the highs and the occasional lows, aka black clouds of dating. Coquette is a big trend right now. Yeah, actually, I was walking through Simon's. Marcella and I are based in Montreal. I was walking through a popular store here named Simon's, and I noticed the pink ribbon emojis are over clothing, socks, everything. The backpack emoji typically signifies going to school, being a student, or backpacking. So it's often used by folks to indicate that they're a student or people who are looking for travel or to go on an adventure. The hand like this with the fingers splayed, It can convey a variety of meanings, including a greeting, a high five, or a gesture of openness. And so Tinder has said that it's often used on Tinder as a symbol of openness, honesty, and transparency, and that folks who use these emojis are trying to convey that they're looking for genuine connection from the get-go. And then the owl. So I theorized to Marcella, I said, oh, the owl, maybe that means like, I think, like, I'm a hoot. Um, or that they were into owls. Again, showing my age here, that was not at all the case. Owls may represent wisdom, knowledge, or the nighttime. The owl was once popularly used in connection with Drake, but we feel that after the Super Bowl, that might have fallen out of favor. But the owl, really, what it's used for is for being open for late night chats or late night DMs, or for wink wink late night activities. So maybe my naive meaning you're a hoot isn't the same as what most people are using an owl for. All right, Marcella, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so some of you might be thinking it's kind of silly that I'm talking about emoji use or the growing use of emojis. But I wanted to say that it's actually extremely important, especially to Gen Zers who are on dating apps. So this 2022 report looked at emoji use in the US. And when it comes to dating, emojis have really become an indicator of how healthy a relationship is. So this chart is showing us that 1 in 3 Gen Zers have ended a relationship with someone using an emoji. 58% of this age group, again, Gen Z, they say they are more likely to seek out a second or third date with someone who communicates using emoji. So again, plays an important part in online dating. 70, this is the other interesting fact, is that men use emoji more than women, at least when it comes to online dating. So 76% of men say they are more likely to use emojis in a conversation with someone that they're interested in versus 68% of women. And then similarly, a higher share of men say they would assume their relationship with someone's going well if they're using more emojis to talk with one another. So, fun facts that I, an elder millennial, learned about my Gen Z friends. Marcella and I also were based in Canada. In Canada, we tend to see Z, but I feel weird saying Gen Z. It just doesn't roll off the tongue the way that Gen Z does. Okay, yes, next slide, Marcella. Okay, so in the chat, I'd like everyone to guess what the second most popular dating app might be. And I can give you all a hint. Uh, it's my personal favorite for personal reasons. So we have Hinge, Grinder, Grinder, Bumble, Bumble, Hinge, eHarmony, Grinder, Bumble, 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 Grinder. Although earlier Mary Frances was saying, I wonder if it's because emojis help give context to texts. Thanks has a different vibe. Yes, thanks definitely has a different vibe than thanks with a smiley face, and I agree. And Marcella says that's a good point. Okay, Marcella, are we ready to show what the most popular dating app is? So it's my personal favorite because it's where I met my husband. It is Bumble. So Bumble is the second most used online dating service in the US after Tinder and in Canada too. It had 3.2 million monthly downloads and has accrued 43 million US in in-app purchases. Bumble is also unique because it is the app you may have heard of where women are the ones who have to initiate the conversation. And it's also like a female owned and female led company. So now let's look at what does the average Bumble user look like? So they have a very high share of their users are millennials, such as myself, compared to the total online population. They also have slightly more male than female users, and a relatively high share of Bumble users have a college degree. They tend to live in cities or urban areas, and 15% of Bumble users consider themselves to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. Bumble users are more likely to play basketball and follow baseball, and they think that the environment is an issue that really needs to be addressed. Much like my husband, Reddit is the most popular app for Bumble users. My husband is always on Reddit. And then, much like myself, one of their favorite activities is to listen to podcasts. So I think that I am very much your stereotypical, prototypical Bumble user. No, not 50%. Sorry, 15% LGBTQ plus. Sorry about that, Grace. Um, Yes, so this is what an average Bumble user looks like. Next slide. So I want everyone in the chat to guess, what do you think, what day of the week is Bumble's most popular day? And by most popular day, we're defining it as the day that people match the most and that have DMs like right to each other the most. Okay, so Friday, Thursday, Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, Monday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm seeing multiple Thursdays. I'm
Nobody wants
seeing
to match on Tuesdays.
no one wants to match on Tuesdays. Yeah. Sunday. See, if I was to get, before I saw this stat, I would have guessed Sundays because I think that was the day that I typically brought myself to go on. Okay, shall we reveal it? It's Monday. Yeah, so it's Monday and specifically between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m. So I think the idea is that you get your date set for the week ahead and then you have something to look forward to at the end of the week. Hooray! I'm Marie Chartrand saying yay! So I think you must have voted Monday. There weren't many for Monday. So congrats. Okay, next. Okay, so few of you have guessed this one already, but what dating app do you think has the highest percentage of male users? Grace says grinder, 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 grinder. I think we could probably just go to the next slide right away, Marcella. Yes, it's Grinder. Grinder has 78% of their users identify as male. Grinder has been the most successful platform for dating among homosexual, bisexual, and trans individuals. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of what the average Grinder user is like. So, Grinder is the 10th most popular online dating service in the US. It's like I said, more popular with men. 78% of their users are male. 43% have college degrees. They're also relatively likely to live in what are called megacities. So by this, we mean cities with more than 5 million inhabitants. Now, a stat that's surprised. Yeah, I see already in the chat, Victoria saying 30%. I agree, Victoria. We were confused. If it's an app that we know that it's often for male hookups, why is the stat so low for the number of people who identify as LGBTQ plus? So we spoke to some colleagues about this. We looked at some research, and we found that when there's research about Grindr users, they're often referred to as the acronym is MSM, and it stands for men who have sex with men. So a lot of Grindr users are men who have sex with men, but they don't necessarily identify as being gay or bi or queer or like part of the or even just the label LGBTQ plus community. And so when we look at the literature a lot, this phrase MSM is used instead of gay to reflect most people's diverse sexual orientations. Politics, society, and current world events are relatively prevalent interests among Grindr users. They're also more likely to play soccer and follow basketball than your average online dating user. A relatively high share of Grindr users think that food and water security is an issue that needs to be addressed, and more Grindr users than other dating app users are on the app X, formerly known as Twitter. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot into what a Grindr users is, farmers only. Yeah. Okay, so um, the year is not important. I should say this part. On what day of the year did Google searches for Grindr peak in 2023? 2023 is the year with the most recent data for this, but it's not, don't think about world events that happened in 2023. Just think of like days of the year. What day of the year do you think had the most Google searches for Grindr? June 1st, February 14th, Valentine's Day, Christmas Day, Valentine's, Christmas, Christmas, December 25th. Okay, I'm detecting a trend in the guesses here. And I will say you are pretty close because, next slide. Do you want to go to the next slide, Marcella? It's December 24th. So, Christmas Eve. So, Google searches for the word grinder spiked globally on Christmas Eve with a Google Trends index of 100 index points. So, Google Trends index is on a scale from 0 to 100, 100 being the most searched person, place, thing, or app, let's say, on that day. So, there were probably a lot of lost, lonely souls who maybe just needed a break from their families on Christmas Eve, and so they were searching grinder. Okay, next slide. So catfishing. I'm sure some of you have heard of the term catfishing, but I thought just in case, I would provide a definition as to what a catfish is. So, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a catfish is chiefly a freshwater, stout-bodied, scaleless, bony fish. Oh, no, sorry. Wrong kind of catfish. A catfish is a person who sets up a false personal profile on a social networking site for fraudulent or deceptive purposes. So it's not an actual fish. It's the second definition. And if you think this is the last time in this presentation that we will be bringing up fish, you were very sorely mistaken. So in 2022, 13% of surveyed adults in the US reported that they had definitely interacted with a catfish online, while 17% said that they had probably had this kind of encounter. However, 38% claim that they had not interacted with an online impersonator, but keep in mind this is all self-reported data, so we have to take this with a grain of salt. 8% of men and 3% of women reported that they had definitely sent money to a catfish, and 10% of men and 12% of women think they probably had sent money to someone pretending to be someone else. Now, this last stat is a perplexing one, and it's an interesting one because it is that 16% of the survey respondents think it's legal to both create a fake online profile or impersonate someone online. And we felt that this last survey question was a bit flawed because it asks two questions with two very different answers. So it is indeed illegal to impersonate someone online, both in the US and in Canada. However, it is legal to create a fake persona. So that's a wrap on catfishing. And now over to Marcella with more fish related data.
Okay, so Emily has given us a wonderful overview about dating apps and their users and the dating app industry. But now I'm going to talk about can we succeed, in quotation marks, at online dating, and what does the research tells us about creating a good dating app profile? And the answer is you just have to be yourself, but maybe not entirely yourself. Emily and I, we both like to be funny, as you might have noticed already. So keep an eye on the Cupids because we've spent some time on those. So I'm going to start by telling you that the initial decision-making time for anyone who's looking at a profile, so the average is 11 seconds. So we are making decisions in 11 seconds. That means that A, your profile has to be really good, but it also means that if your profile doesn't get selected, you shouldn't feel too bad because they don't really know you. It's only been 11 seconds. However, one thing that the research does tell us is that pictures are very, very, very important. So the first thing that we found in the research is that users look at pictures first and then text, which I guess it kind of makes sense because when you are scrolling on an app, you see someone's picture like sort of front and center, and then you have to scroll down to see the text. But it's not just any pictures. We wanted to make sure that we are using high quality pictures. Users want to see pictures, as I said, that are high quality, that have good lighting, so we can see the person in that picture. We want people to have a friendly expression, and we also want people to use pictures that highlight their interests or activities, because we're trying to get more out of people than just the way they look. We want to get insights into their personalities, their likes or dislikes. And then this, to me, is one of the most interesting things that we found, which is attractiveness can make up for for differences in almost any other category. So we found a study that we have found two interesting studies. The first one had looked at different things like education, religion, job. And what it found was that none of them affected whether a person would like someone or not more than the way they looked. We also found in another study that that basically if someone finds someone else attractive, geographical distance doesn't really matter. That no, it doesn't matter that people are more likely to go for people who live far away if they're higher on the attractiveness scale. Now, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Each study has their own way to figure out what attractiveness means, but that was interesting. And the first study that I mentioned also said that if you barely improve your attractiveness in your picture, the chances of your profile being selected go up between 23 and 45%. However, if you do the same, again, just barely improving the text in your profile, your chances go up by only 2%. So let's invest some time on those pictures. However, we want to be careful. We don't want to be too sexy on our pictures. Why? Because research has found that sexualized profile pictures are viewed negatively. And when we're talking about sexualized, we're probably not talking about what you're imagining right now. We're not talking about sexualized in, let's say, burly pornographic terms. We're talking about shirtless pictures, pictures at the gym, maybe overtly sexy beach pictures, things like that. So it's not necessarily something that is explicit. It's just that it has that sort of hint of sexualization. So a few studies have looked at profiles with sexualized pictures, and they have asked users to rate them on different types of sort of like prompts. And they found that users would usually consider people who posted sexualized profile pictures, A, to be less competent, also to have less social attractiveness or appeal. So not physical, but social, to be less likely to look for a long-term relationship, to be less trustworthy in the case of women. This was interesting because it was not in the case of men. Men who were attractive were considered to be more trustworthy, but women who were attractive were not. They're considered to be more likely to receive cyber abuse and more likely to engage in sexual risk-taking. And another surprising finding was that men are judged more harshly for posting sexualized pictures than women. So let's talk a little bit about successful profiles and what you do want to do. So the first thing I want to think is that users tend to go for profiles that are similar in personal or physical traits, relationship preferences, and share experiences. So you want to make sure that you are including that information in your profile so someone else can be attracted to that by getting more of an insight into you. To that, we also want to have a well-crafted bio that presents that personality and their interests and hobbies and relationship goals. And then we have a bit of a conundrum because research shows that almost everyone in a dating app, what they want is to be known. So their profile sort of indicates that they want to be known. But we are more attracted to profiles that show an interest in knowing our partners, which means that everyone is looking for the same thing, but nobody is actually giving people what they're actually looking for. And I'll add one more interesting tidbit about similarity. That similarity works in most cases, except for introverts, because usually it's harder for introverts, for two introverts to make it to a date, which as an introvert, I understand why. And coming back to pictures and your profile, we want to talk a little bit about some photo turnoffs. So this is a survey that was done by Palm, which is a British dating app, and they surveyed their users, and they found that people do not like pictures where you're posing with a car, heavily filtered pictures, taking pictures in the gym. That's one of those sexualized pictures. The same thing with pouting. Pictures of half their face. The reason people don't like that is because it makes people suspicion of, as Emily mentioned, catfishing. So it makes people think that it might be a scam because you cannot see the person's entire face. This shows how old I am because it says club photographer pictures, and I had no idea this was a thing. Pictures with endangered animals, selfies with celebrities. I'll also share here one of my personal experiences where I kept seeing this guy who had a picture with Obama, and all I could think about was the TikTok sound, he knows Barack, we like Barack. And then vaping pictures. Keep the vaping in mind because we're going to come back to it in a little bit. But I actually left something off this list because I want us to have a deeper conversation on one of the supposed photo turnoffs, which is to fish or not to fish. That is the question. So in the sort of like social in the social discourse around online dating lately, we have seen a lot about men with pictures where they're holding fish. They're quite prevalent. But will those pictures help them catch them a catch, or will there be a deterrent? You know what? We'll ask the chat just really quickly what you think. If you think fish pictures are a yay or a nay. Someone says nay. Charlene says nay, hard no. No. Okay, so people are not into the fish pictures. Okay, interesting. I may end up changing your, I wouldn't mind, but I'm rural. Sam, that's great. Okay, I may end up changing your mind or not. So when we started talking about this, about having this session, my first thought was, oh, I want to talk about the fish. And I even told Emily when we were sort of like distributing the work, the fish thing is mine. And when I was researching, I originally found this study, but a company called Fishbrain. Fishbrain is a social app for people who like to fish, which it's already, to me, you know, a little bit biased maybe. And the study is a bit old. It's from I think they did the data collection in 2017, so 2016, 2017. But there was another issue with the study, which is they surveyed sorority members of only one sorority. So we're assuming that almost all those women sort of like had a lot in common, and maybe they had similar backgrounds. They also were only between 18 and 22, which gives us a very sort of like narrow view of this issue, or a very narrow gap in terms of age. And what it ended up saying was that 46% of the preferred candidates with fish pictures. What I find really interesting about the study, and this is a study that keeps being reported on to this day, even though the study, you cannot find it anymore. I actually had to go on the Internet Archive to find the original one. But what I found really interesting about the study is that even though it's 46%, it was reported in the media and by Fishbrain that having fish pictures was beneficial to your dating profile. But it was only 46%, which means that 54% said no. But it was still being shown as like, oh, you might want to have a picture with the fish. The study also said that the most popular fish was the great northern tilefish. I do not know what that is. And the least popular fish was the juvenile common carp. I guess because it was just too mature. It was just too juvenile. And then again, not great study design here because they then talked about how many people had pictures with fish on Tinder, but they had a mix of states and cities, but it turns out that in Florida it was 22%, San Francisco 10%, Chicago 8%, New York 5%, and London was less than 1%. That being said, I think like geography plays a really big role in this, because I would assume that someone living in Florida has much better access to a place to fish, maybe even to a boat, than someone who lives in London, because I would not fish in the Thames, but that's just me. Same thing with the East River in New York. I wouldn't do it. You do you. But, you know, Emily and I kept talking about the fish thing, and we kept doing some research, and I found a really good opinion piece that I want to share with you because it put this issue on it gave me a new perspective on this issue. So you can read with me. I'm going to read it aloud. It's not going to take that long, but I thought it was a good argument. It says, the theory behind the fish pictures that are infiltrating dating profiles everywhere is centered around the level of support that occurred before the photo was taken. Fishing isn't easy. It can be boring, yes, but once the fish bites and you have to reel it in, it can be quite the task. There's a sense of pride in reeling a fish. There's a sense of accomplishment. And no matter who reels one in, everyone around you celebrates with you. This shared experience results in the toxic male veil being torn down for a moment as a guy and his pals pose for a photo, embracing not only one another, but vulnerability too. When it comes to fish pictures on dating apps, there's more than meets the eye. The subject matter is less that of a dead fish and more of a man who felt comfortable, supported, and confident enough to ask his buddy to snap his photo, which seems to be another phenomenon in and of itself. Men feeling as though they can't ask this of their peers without coming across as unmanly. And when I read this, I thought about a lot of times where I've been on dating apps and I've seen a lot of pictures of men with their phones like this on like in a bathroom, and me thinking, don't I have a friend to take a picture of them? And maybe they don't. Maybe they think it's unmanly. And it's another example of how sexism and the patriarchy also affects men, and it's also detrimental to men, not only women. So now when you see a fish picture, maybe we'll all be more amazing. And I see someone in the chat that loves that we had the stats on the fish. I loved it too. That's like kind of my jam. We're gonna find, and we have a few notes in terms of dating and things that people have found that they don't like. So we found a study that talked about language errors, and it found that users find language errors, both typos and grammatical errors, like they don't like them. They find that it negatively affects their impressions of a profile. However, not everyone notices the errors. So if you don't notice them, you don't care. So if you care about them, yes, it will be an issue. But if you don't care about them and you don't notice them, that's fine. Smoking, remember I talked about vaping before. Smoking profiles indicating that the individual is a non-smoker. We see better impressions than those who indicate they smoke. I do think, however, that this is this will be different in different countries and their attitudes towards smoking. I think, for example, here in North America, we have a very negative view of smoking, which I would say maybe in France would not necessarily be the case because smoking is a lot more normalized. And the last thing that we do not want to see on a profile is negativity. And this can be a long list of must-haves or deal breakers, complaints or pessimistic views about dating or past relationships, or bios are overly focused on the writer's own needs and desires. We might all seen them when it says, if you're only going to say hi and like not continue the conversation, don't even write me, or don't swipe right, or things that says, I'm looking for this, and this. Those kinds of things are really off-putting and they're not really successful because, you wouldn't do it with someone that you meet in person. So why would you do it with someone that you're meeting through an app? And then the last part of this section will talk about the way people lie on profiles. So research has found that people, or at least this study that we're talking about in this slide, has found that people lie on a variety of things. Everyone lies on their appearance. Height seems to be a very popular thing to lie about. I found this really funny, but they looked at a few apps and they found that the average male height in that app was 5'11", but the national average is 5'9" for men. And then for women, the in-app average was 5'5", and then the national average is actually 5'4". And they found, again, we're going back to the patriarchy and sexism, that women are more likely to misrepresent their weight. However, men are more likely to misrepresent their personal assets. When we talk about personal assets, we're not talking about things they own. We're talking about education. We're talking about jobs, things like that. They're also more likely to misrepresent their personal interests and personal goals. And what I found absolutely astounding was how people lie about their age, because it found that men misrepresent, I don't want to say lie, I want to say misrepresent their age more than women. However, the bulk of this misrepresentation happens in men between 20 and 40. And after women turn 50, it kind of balances and it's very similar between, like that gap really narrows and it's almost similar for men and women. But men between 20 and 40 are a lot more likely to misrepresent their age. Now, one caveat about this study is that it relies on self-reporting. So people could be lying about the things they say they're lying about. So now that we talk about profiles, we're going to go into our last section of the day, which is safety and data privacy and working with all of that in dating apps, because we have to know how to protect ourselves and we have to know how safe they are. So This is a study by the Pew Research Center where they asked people if they had had negative interactions with others in online dating platforms. And what they found was that 37% of people I had found that people kept contacting them even though they said they were not interested. 35% said that they had been sent sexually explicit messages or images. 28% said that they had been called an offensive name, and 9% had said they had been physically threatened with physical harm. And then if we look down, we can see that almost for every age group, women are more vulnerable than men. Although the only one that's a little bit different is men over 50. Well, that would be something worth exploring. And then another thing that we have to think is there are also other potential harms or other potential harassment that could happen. So another study had looked at what they called technology facilitated violence. So, and that might include sexual violence or stalking. And because a lot of these apps are location based, that presents a risk if that data is not actually kept carefully guarded. So I would like to say that I came up with swipe left for identity theft, but it is not mine. This is the name of a study. I do have to say, take a look at our bibliography because the titles of these articles are so good. If you love puns, this is the place to go. So this study looked at 15 apps, and they looked at how much information they were being asked. They were asking of people, and they also looked at how vulnerable was that information. They found that the nosyiest apps were Plenty of Fish, Mythic, and OkCupid because they were asking information on 23 different fields. Plenty of Fish was even asking about number of siblings and birth order. Now, it is possible that because Plenty of Fish, Mythic, and OkCupid were originally websites, that some of that, some of the questionnaires that they used to have that tend to be a lot longer have been taken to the app realm, even though they're not necessarily applicable. Hinge asks for 21 fields, which doesn't surprise me because Hinge is supposed to be this app that matches you on a different level that is not just the way you look. So I understand why they would want to ask so many things. Grindr surprisingly doesn't ask for that much, only 13 fields, but some of them are highly sensitive. And that includes HIV status or sexual orientation. However, there's previous research on this that indicates that these disclosures may be seen as beneficial by its audience. In terms of privacy controls, some apps have the or give you the ability of turn some of your parts of your profile private, but a lot of them, those options are only available if you have a premium subscription. And then in terms of your location, so 9 apps will offer information about how to revoke your geolocation permissions so that they can't track it, so you won't tell people or wouldn't show where you are. However, that may affect the way the app works. Some apps, what they're doing right now is that you can hide your exact location or you can manually enter a town as an alternative location. And I want to point everyone out to this particular, it's not even a study, it's a site by the Mozilla Foundation called Privacy Not Included. The Mozilla Foundation they're the team behind Firefox, if you've ever heard of the web browser Firefox, but they also work in the realm of internet privacy, responsible use of the internet, responsible management of internet infrastructure. And they have this entire website dedicated to privacy, and they have evaluated not only dating apps, but a variety of different tools that people use, and they tell you whether privacy is included or not. The link is right there. So it found that most apps barely met their security recommendations, and that is really dangerous because data can be leaked. And there's a case where there was a big leak from Grindr. The data ended up with the data broker who sold it to the Catholic Church so they could keep an eye on their priests. There's also a concern about the reliance on AI because it's not so reliable. The algorithms we have, these tools or apps use are actually secret. So if they're not done properly, they could be reinforcing discrimination, stereotypes. They could not be benefit, they could be not beneficial. And also you run the risk of living in echo chambers because if we're only presented with people who are exactly like us, we might be missing on a lot of people and a lot of different perspectives. And also that apps can collect information that users might not even realize that they're sharing. A good case is Coffee Meets Bagel, which to me sounds like the name of a Hallmark movie where a woman inherits her grandmother's bagel shop. But Coffee Meets Bagel says that they can collect data, content and data from video chats. So it could be that they could actually be recording your video chats. We don't know because they're not explicit, like it's not clear enough of what they mean, but it does say that they could collect information from your video chats. Another thing that we wanted to think about when we think about what information they're collecting is a lot of apps now have a biometric verification. So just to make sure that you are posting pictures of yourself. So you will upload a picture, but then before your profile can go live, you'll have you record your face so that it can kind of compare the two. However, when we do that, we are giving the app our biometric information. So something to think about. So last thing is how to protect yourself. The first thing we want to do is we want to approach our dating profile like your LinkedIn profile. So assume that everything is visible to everyone and only share what you would be comfortable being public. We want to avoid logging in with third-party accounts and don't link your social media profiles. I do sign up to things with my Facebook account, which I guess I won't be doing anymore. And then the last one is going to restrict permissions as much as possible in your device settings. So like camera roll, contacts, location, etc. So that has been all for today for us. We will be sharing the slides. We will be sharing the recording with you. The bibliography is linked here, and it is 3 pages of articles and other sources. So I do encourage you to take a look at it. And before we end and open to questions, we do have a little favor to ask of you. So this is called Pop Culture by the Numbers. We've done one on Taylor Swift. We've done this one now, but we want to ask you what you would be interested in seeing presented in this format. So if you have any ideas, you can, I'm just going to also get the link, but you can either scroll the, you can scan the QR code, which I'll put back on the screen in a second, or you can just go to this link that I'm going to put in the chat and let us know. So we can get more ideas of things that we can explore. And now we are opening it up for questions or anything else you want to talk about. We have a couple of minutes.
Marcella, did you want to leave the slide open so that they could scan the QR code?
I'll do
Thanks.
that.
I'm just going to reply with the pink ribbon to everyone's messages now. Now it's going to be my new favorite emoji.
Okay,
I didn't know what it meant before, but now I know.
We have a question that says, what topics did you want to include but didn't have time?
I wanted to do tick. Oh, in this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, no.
I
You go
have to
ahead.
say that I found more like when we were looking at articles and when I was doing research, I found more articles than what I could work with. And there was like it has been explored from so many different aspects. I think we also try to stay away from some more negative stuff, just because we're trying to have a fun sort of end of Love Data Week event on a Friday afternoon. There's a lot of research again on violence. There's a lot of research on discrimination. But I think for me, I wish I could have found more about conversations in dating apps. And that was something I couldn't find. So I think for me, that was one of the ones that I wish I could have found more.
And also, I think it's that, like we said at the beginning, so much of the research that we found was North American, mostly white, and mostly heterosexual. So we would like to see more research in groups outside of those 3 main categories.
I see we're having some issues with the bibliography. It may be our fault.
Oh, yeah.
Emily goes because I have the. Can you
I
just
can
go to?
try it.
No, can
Yeah.
you just go to the file? I think that maybe we just set the permissions to McGill only. Can you just
Yeah,
like
I thought I
make?
had sent it to not, but I will go do that
Yes,
now.
it's problem solved. Is there any data showing how successful people are at finding long-term relationships and or leading to marriage? Uh, well, Emily had one. We had the one slide, right? That talk about
The marriage, yeah, that it was that 24% of LGBTQ plus couples had met their partner online. And that when we talk about partners, we're talking about like long-term romantic partnerships, long-term couples or married couples, versus it was 9%. Again, this is American only, but 9% of straight adults met their partner online in the US. Um, sorry, I'm
no
trying to
problem. And I'll
change the
also
access.
share since we have it here. I'm gonna like just leave because I want to be able to access another file.
It says access denied to me.
Okay, I'll go from
It says
here.
anyone with this link can view. So I'm just going to copy it into the chat
Okay, let's try that
and
and
let's
then we'll fix
see.
it.
It's like a very long SharePoint link.
It's all McGill's fault.
Yeah, we're just going to blame Miguel.
Okay, so I was able to open it.
Okay, they say it works.
Oh, okay, lovely. Yes.
We'll
So
change that link in the
we'll change
presentation
that.
though.
Yeah, we'll change the link when before we send it. I use the oh we have a URL shortener and I used it and maybe it didn't work.
Hmm.
But yes, we will be sharing this. We're sharing the slides. We will be sharing the recording and we will be sharing we also have a guide of like a question, sort of like a list of questions that we have if anyone wants to like view this with someone else and discuss it. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed it. I know that we enjoyed a
Did you
lot.
come across any articles of non-dating app meeting? Does that exist anymore? Uh, well, we had just focused on the online dating app one. I will say that in terms of the data, there was a really great infographic that I saw that I didn't include because I think it was from like 20, it was like pre-pandemic, it was like 2019. But basically it was like worldwide and it was like a line graph and it showed basically how couples meet. And online dating was just and everything else, like in a bar, at school, at work, whatever, was just plummeting. So people are still meeting in person, but and this was pre-pandemic again. So people do meet in person, but it seems like it's far less than it ever was before.
Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. Uh, um,
Oh, you found the chart? Yeah. Okay. It's similar to the one that I saw on, I had found it on Statista. Um, but someone over here shared it on, Joanna shared it from via Reddit.
one thing I will say, and Emily had alluded to this in the beginning, is
Thank you,
that
Jackie.
a lot of the a lot of the research that we found, it wasn't necessarily that we're only looking at people who are white, North American, and straight. It's just that sometimes a lot of the apps, like the people who are in the apps, skew that way. So it'd be interesting to see how maybe if looking at like less popular apps or because like Tinder, Bumble, those are some of the most well, Emily told us they're the most popular ones.
Hmm.
So that would be interesting to see. A lot of research on Plenty of Fish, which I found surprising. But okay, thank you so much for coming today. We hope to see you again soon in some other workshop, but today was our last day of Love Data Week. And keep an eye for our email with the slides and the recording. Thank you, everyone.